Wake up, filthy.
Let's talk about what music really does to your brain and why you should be careful with what you're feeding it. Music is everywhere. It follows into our cars, into our bedrooms, into our workplaces. It fills in the silence as we work, think, and feel. But music isn't just something we hear. It does something to your brain, real measurable things. And depending on how you use it, it could be really beneficial, but could also be extremely detrimental, causing effects that you might not even notice until you're almost too far gone. And this is not a video saying music is bad. I love music. I've memorized thousands of songs, but that's actually part of the problem. One of the biggest psychological effects of music is something called rumination, but there are different kinds of rumination, and we'll go over the top 4. First, we have brooding rumination, where your thoughts are often unproductive, judgmental, and repetitive. You often self-blame, dwell on negative emotions or problems, which intensifies your anxiety or depression rather than solving it, leaving you feeling hopeless. Second is reflective rumination, which is more of an analytical style of thinking. You think about why you felt a certain way at a certain point, and you use the experience to help you shape yourself into the person that you want to become. Third is intrusive rumination. It's when your mind is getting sent all these negative emotions and negative thoughts that you have absolutely no control over, which creates a negative feedback loop, which just fuels your anxiety or depression. Fourth and finally, we have deliberate rumination, which is the same as reflective rumination. It has the same conscious effort of trying to understand your emotions and then come to terms with those emotions. And sometimes you have to be willing to reshape your feelings on certain situations, especially traumatic ones, but simply to reconstruct your consciousness for your own benefit, which is, more positive and proactive ways of thinking. Researchers have found that when teenagers and young adults listen to sad music while they're already sad, it obviously doesn't help them. Instead of healing you, it actually keeps you stuck. You think you're finding comfort listening to this kind of music, but what you could really be doing is reinforcing these ideas of anger and distress and sadness. And this especially matters for kids, teenagers, and young adults, because we tend to use music as emotional support. But sometimes the lyrics, the tone, the imagery, it doesn't support you. Instead, it's actually dragging you deeper down the hole you're so worried about getting out of. Music in your mind has a direct line to memory. That's why one song could bring back a certain memory, certain friend group, an era of your life you totally forgot about. That's not accidental. Music activates your auditory cortex, which processes the sounds and melodies, the hippocampus, which binds the music to memories, and your amygdala, which stamps the emotions onto those memories. So when you hear a song, you're not just re-listening to it, you're reliving the experience. That's extremely powerful and just as much dangerous, because if you're replaying these traumatic events in your head via music, well, obviously that's not good. And all the songs you've memorized aren't in one little folder in your brain. That's what I used to think. They live in this network. The auditory cortex encodes pitch, melody, and tone. The hippocampus stores the memory. The prefrontal cortex handles attention and recall. And then the language areas in your brain help you remember the lyrics. And then the basal ganglia and cerebellum track the rhythm and timing. And then the reward system in your brain releases the dopamine, especially when a song is emotional. And when I say emotional, I don't mean like it's emotional. It means you had an emotional reaction to it. The song itself can be Crazy Story Part 3 by King Von.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna make a banger with this.
But if you had an emotional reaction to it, it sticks to your brain like glue. Like, take for example, What Does the Fox Say? Okay, it's not a good song. I don't think anybody genuinely enjoyed listening to it. But the cringiness, at least for me in that song, made me have an emotional reaction to it. I cringed to it. So it's stuck in my brain. I think all of America's brain, and all of the world's brain, like glue. With repetition, songs go from conscious memory to almost automatic behavior. You don't think about the words, you just say them. That's important, remember that. Music doesn't just reflect who you are, it helps build who you are. Researchers have found that your musical preferences affect your identity, emotional regulation, social behavior, motivation, and even your values and norms. And there's obviously certain genres that are associated with rebellion, sex, impulsivity, like when you're being impulsive, and aggression. And no, that's not because the music magically makes people bad, but because music reinforces your identity. And if it's bad, then it's reinforcing that negative behavior, negative agendas, and the overall group behavior. What you listen to becomes a part of your self-image. Now, let's be fair. Music does have huge benefits. It can improve your focus and attention. It can increase your creativity. It can reduce your stress and anxiety. It can encourage physical movement. It can actually improve your reaction time. It could strengthen your memory. It can even improve your spatial reasoning, which is your ability to imagine things in your mind. And then it just promotes brain development in kids and adults. Music activates your frontal and prefrontal cortex, which are responsible for your judgment and self-control. That's why background music can help people focus, especially those with ADHD. So no, music isn't evil, but it is powerful. Here's a question nobody likes to ask. If music can do all this good, why would anybody flood their brains with nihilism, self-destruction, addiction, or violence? And before anybody gets defensive, I'm not attacking any one genre. I love Juice WRLD. I've listened to just about every single song that he has, and I have memorized almost all the lyrics to all the songs that he has. So I can tell you, and if you're a Juice WRLD fan as well, you would know, his music revolves around sex, drugs, murder, Percocets, angels, demons, gods, bitches ain't shit, that type of stuff. Oh, and don't forget drug addictions and despair. And I guess alcohol addictions too, because that boy's always talk about some lean. Lean with me, rock with me, get high with me if you rock with me, smoke with me, drink with me, fucked up liver with some bad kidneys. Yeah, told her if I die, I'ma die young. Every day I been getting fucked up. I don't think I gotta break down why those lyrics were bad. But pretending that repeated exposure to those themes isn't influencing you is naive. And it's not just rap. I love country music, specifically honky tonk. But a massive amount of secular country music too is about alcohol, sex, escapism, and numbing pain. Different genre, same pattern. Both not necessarily evil, but both can have evil effects if misused. So here's the real takeaway. Everything must be done in regulation. You could be doing something as simple as drinking a glass of water. That's very innocent. In fact, it's good for you, right? There's nothing wrong with drinking a glass of water. Well, if you don't do that in regulation, and I stand there in my kitchen, and I continuously drink hundreds and thousands of cups of water, my body will probably fucking explode. Okay, you can die over water consumption. Now, obviously, that's very extreme, but you get what I'm trying to say. You can be doing something extremely innocent, but if you're not doing it in conscious regulation, it could really mess you up. So listen to your King Von. Listen to your Taylor Swift. Listen to your Michael Bublé. Just don't let it consume you. Recognize what it's doing. Be conscious of the messages that you are putting into your head, and don't let the lyrics influence or become your beliefs. There is a reason the saying goes, oh, be careful little ears what you hear. Oh, be careful little eyes what you see. Your brain doesn't defend itself automatically. If you consume something repeatedly, it becomes normalized. Music will indoctrinate you without you noticing. So consciously choose how you interpret a song. Don't let your brain just passively absorb these messages that are affecting who you are becoming. So you don't need to stop loving music. You just need to be aware and be intentional. Deuces.
Why we greedy like wolves, Adam Eve with the fruit. Why we need new, only got 2 seats. Why we need new goods.